I ignored a patient's creepy warning, then my legs were covered in bruises. Years ago, when I was working on a psych ward, I had an encounter that still sends chills down my spine and makes me question the nature of reality. I was a young nurse back then, eager and a bit naive, working with a diverse group of patients. One resident in particular, a teenager, who barely spoke, other than to occasionally ask the time, left an indelible mark on my memory. It was an ordinary day, or so I thought. I was doing my rounds when this teenager, who had never shown any interest in conversation, approached me. Their voice was soft but clear as they asked, "Miss, why do you have bruises all over your legs?" I laughed at the randomness of the question and looked down at my legs. I was wearing pants, so there was no way they could have seen any bruises, even if I had them. Amused, I asked what they meant by it, but they just muttered, "Nothing, never mind," and walked away, leaving me standing there puzzled. When I got home that evening, the memory of the question nagged at me. Out of curiosity, I checked my legs. They were completely clear, no bruises, no marks, nothing unusual. I shrugged it off as a strange but harmless interaction and went about my evening. Over the next few days, however, something unsettling began to happen. I started to notice small bruises forming on my legs. At first, they were barely noticeable, just tiny dots of purple and blue. I couldn't recall bumping into anything or injuring myself. But as the days passed, the bruises multiplied and grew darker, becoming a patchwork of purple, yellow, and blue, covering my legs in a disturbing mosaic. By the end of the week, my legs were a painful mess. I couldn't understand what was happening. There was no explainable cause, no accident or incident that could account for the bruises. The more I thought about it, the more the teenagers' question haunted me. How had they known? Due to staffing needs, I was reassigned to different units over the next several weeks and lost track of the teenager. By the time I returned to my original ward, the resident had been discharged. I never had the chance to speak to them again or to understand what they might have seen or known. The bruises, though, stayed with me for several more weeks, slowly fading away but leaving a lasting impression on my psyche. For years, I tried to forget about the incident, chalking it up to a bizarre coincidence or an overactive imagination. Life moved on, and so did I, but recently, while going through some old journals, I stumbled upon an entry detailing the entire experience. Reading it again sent a shiver down my spine, bringing back the eerie feeling that had settled over me during that time. I'm sharing this here because I'm curious if anyone else has had similar experiences. Have you ever encountered glitches that caused inexplicable pain or injury? Do you believe these events are mere coincidences, or is there something more at play? I still don't have answers, but perhaps someone out there does. Update 1. Hey everyone, I wanted to provide an update on the strange experience I shared a while ago regarding the inexplicable bruises that appeared on my legs after a resident at the psych ward asked me about them. Your responses and theories were fascinating, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about and investigating what happened. After posting my story, I decided to dig deeper. I revisited my old journals and started keeping a closer eye on my health, just in case something similar happened again. For months, nothing unusual occurred, and I began to wonder if the whole thing had just been a bizarre coincidence. Then, about a month ago, I received an unexpected email. It was from an old colleague who had worked with me at the psych ward. She had come across my post and wanted to talk. We arranged a call, and what she told me added another layer to the mystery. She remembered the teenager who had approached me. According to her, shortly after the resident asked me about the bruises, they began to exhibit increasingly strange behavior. They would often be found staring at the walls, murmuring to themselves, and occasionally drawing odd, abstract patterns on pieces of paper. One day, just before their discharge, she found a notebook in the teenager's room. It was filled with sketches of legs covered in bruises, and there were pages filled with cryptic symbols and words like warning, pain, and protect. Intrigued and slightly unnerved, I decided to track down the teenager. I managed to find some information through a former colleague who had access to old patient records. After a bit of digging, I learned that the teenager, now in their 20s, was living in a nearby town. I reached out to them through social media, and to my surprise, they agreed to meet. When we met at a quiet cafe, the atmosphere was tense. The now-adult former resident was calm, but seemed to carry an air of somber wisdom far beyond their years. I cautiously brought up the incident from years ago, and their response was chilling. They told me that they had always had a sense of knowing things about people, particularly when those people were in danger or about to be harmed. They didn't understand why or how, but it had been a part of their life for as long as they could remember. When they saw me at the ward, they had a sudden and overwhelming vision of my legs covered in bruises. They felt compelled to warn me, but didn't know how to explain it. I asked them if they still experienced these visions, and they nodded. They said it had become more manageable over the years, but they couldn't always predict when it would happen or what it would reveal. As we parted ways, they looked at me with a strange intensity and said, "Be careful." Sometimes, knowing is more dangerous than not. Since that meeting, I've been hyper-aware of my surroundings and my health. Nothing unusual has happened, but the sense of unease remains. I've also started seeing a therapist to help process these experiences and manage the anxiety they've brought into my life. I still don't have a concrete explanation for what happened. Was it a supernatural ability, a psychic connection? Or just a bizarre series of coincidences? I don't know. But I do know that reality is far more mysterious than we often give it credit for. Thank you all for your support and for sharing your own stories and theories. This community has been a great source of comfort and insight. If anything else happens, I'll be sure to update you. Until then, stay curious and keep questioning the nature of reality.